Greetings. This is the one you've known as Jesus the Christ. Accounts of various kinds of contact with non-physical beings have been recorded throughout history in every culture, many of them in the Bible. Some of those experiences formed the foundation of their culture's religious beliefs, such as the story of the burning bush in the Old Testament. Although your five senses and science can't explain these exchanges between your world and ours, many of them were deeply meaningful, inspiring, and transformational to those who experienced them. Of course, not every account in the Bible or elsewhere actually happened, but enough of these accounts did happen and continue to happen and have a certain consistency in their information to warrant at least an open mind toward such phenomena. The reason psychics and psychic abilities aren't more widely accepted is that the results of contact with non-physical realms are so mixed. If the information coming through channels and psychics was consistently true and useful, channels and psychics wouldn't be so disparaged and questioned. The Bible and others are right in warning people of the dangers of channeling and other psychic gifts, since many people do have negative experiences related to these abilities. Some channels and psychics are not very skilled, a few are charlatans, but some are sincerely serving as bridges between your dimension and ours. The discrepancies in people's experience with channels and psychics are due to the different kinds of beings encountered in non-physical realms. These realms are extremely varied. There are many different levels with many different kinds of beings, all with their own perspectives and agendas. Many on the lower astral plane have an agenda that has nothing to do with service, while those in the higher realms are dedicated to serving humanity. The lower astral plane is populated by deceased human beings of various soul ages. Many channels talk with the deceased and receive information from them that helps bring solace to the loved ones they've left behind. Those dedicated to this type of work are performing a service of healing for those who've lost loved ones. They also assure people that life continues after death, which is of enormous consolation. Some channels also communicate to deceased human beings who want to teach or help people in some way. However, depending on the soul age and degree of knowledge, the help they have to offer is often of limited value. Many of these deceased human beings sincerely want to help, but they aren't able to be of any more help than when they were alive. Being dead doesn't confer magical powers or infinite knowledge. Usually beings who speak with a heavy accent fall into this category. A strong personality and accent are generally signs of a deceased human being who hasn't attained status yet as a spirit guide. Spirit guides, which are the non-physical beings assigned to guide human beings, abide on the higher astral plane. Some of the tricksters and con artists who reside on the lower astral plane are deceased human beings who were deceitful and manipulative in their lifetimes on Earth and are continuing their games in the afterlife. These individuals often toy with new or undeveloped channels and people playing with Ouija boards, with bad results. They enjoy scaring people and making them look foolish. The lower astral plane is also populated with negative entities, beings who have never been and will never be human, who are trying to gain power in their realm by manipulating human beings to do their bidding. Negative entities are able to do this through your unconscious mind and the voice in your head. Their voice may sound like your own voice or an authority's, but more negative. When your thoughts turn very negative and stay that way for long, you're likely to be under the influence of a negative entity. This is a real phenomenon. Negative entities play a role in mental illness, including depression, and even in some physical illness. You know when you're in touch with a negative entity because the result is feeling bad or frightened. Fear is a favorite tool of such beings. Making people afraid makes them feel and seem powerful. For this reason, they like predicting negative future events. They give warnings and raise alarms or expose supposed nefarious plots being carried out behind the scenes. When unsuspecting people receive such information, they're grateful for what seems to them like something they really need to know. But they don't. Such frightful scenarios are made up by these beings, since they're very poor at predicting the future. And in any case, the future is not very predictable. Such predictions make these beings seem powerful and all-knowing, which is why they do this. This is just a way for these beings to make themselves seem important and useful. Negative entities and other lower astral beings also love telling people what they want to hear about themselves and their future. And isn't that why many people go to psychics? For instance, they often tell people they'll meet the man or woman of their dreams, or come into a lot of money. This makes people happy and opens them up to hearing more. Personal information of this nature is very enticing and draws people in. Another favorite ploy is telling people what's going on behind the scenes, in secret, which most people would love to know. Not knowing these things is one of the ego's greatest frustrations. Isn't this one reason you love movies? You get to see behind the scenes when the characters themselves are unable to. What fun! Unfortunately, this isn't how real life works. You don't get to know these things. Of course, there's no way to test or check the veracity of this secret or behind-the-scenes information, which is why this ploy works so well. Because the information is unverifiable, lower astral beings can say almost anything and get away with it. Many a conspiracy theory has been started and spread by such beings and negative extraterrestrials speaking to people through multiple channels. This is going on today without channels realizing that they and their followers are being duped. A channel can be channeling a higher dimensional being such as myself and then lose contact with that being. If that channel is no longer able to reach that level, the higher dimensional being will step aside and allow a lower astral being to take over that role. This happens more often than you may think, since not all channels are able to maintain a high vibration. When this happens, it's not unusual for this to go unnoticed by channels and their followers, since lower astral beings are excellent imitators. This experience is part of a channel's lessons and his or her followers' lessons. Unless the channel and those listening to the channelings are educated about non-physical realms and able to sense the level of the being they're speaking with, they may be duped for a very long time. These are treacherous waters. Lower astral beings love toying with your beliefs, and your beliefs are powerful. Believing lies is dangerous, and at the very least humiliating when you discover you've been fooled. It isn't fun being conned, and negative entities and other lower astral beings are extremely good at it. Because they can read your thoughts, your emotions, your desires, and your past, they can easily manipulate you. They're trying to get you to upend your life and relationships, hurt yourself or others, or just appear foolish, which is the inevitable result, because eventually they do get found out. The con can only go on so long before it becomes exposed. Lies don't really compete very well with the truth. Conning people is how negative entities get their points in their realm. Negative entities want power over human beings because power is the currency of their realm. The more power negative entities appear to have in your realm, the more power they're given in theirs. Power for them is like money in your world. The more power they have, the more power they're able to accumulate. Since negative entities don't believe in love and don't experience it, the little bit of joy and relief from their own fear that they get from harassing human beings is what their existence is all about. It is a sad existence indeed, and one that will eventually end by them realizing the truth that love is the way. But they may exist in this fearful realm for a long time, constantly jockeying for a higher spot in the hierarchy, until they can be convinced by angels or others to go into the light or love. They run from the light or a realm filled with love because they believe they will perish in that light. They believe the existence they have, however horrible, is better than perishing. They've been told these lies by those higher in the hierarchy of their realm, and they believe this until they don't. Sooner or later, every entity gets to a place of such suffering that it takes a chance and goes into the light and discovers that it's been lied to all along. Love does exist, and love feels good. Eventually, such beings evolve sufficiently to become helpers and healers working on behalf of love. Once free of that terrible existence, most devote themselves to bringing others to the light and back home to the love of the Creator. Christians call these negative entities demons or demonic forces, which gives them too much power, since these are very scary words from your point of view. Negative entities are skilled at scaring people, but they can't really cause harm unless people believe what they say and do what they say. Negative entities can't physically harm people, but they can talk people into harming themselves or others through the voice in your head, and they often try to. Rather than being demons in the usual sense of the word, their situation is pathetic and warrants your compassion. If you believe they're attached to you or communicating with you mentally, speak to them compassionately. Tell them that you know about them and that they're no longer welcome in your energy field and in your head, and encourage them to go into the light. Do this forcefully, without a sense of fear or anger, since fear and anger are negative emotions, and negative entities feed on such emotions. Then do your best to maintain a positive emotional state. As long as you remain positive, negative entities won't be able to affect you energetically or intrude into your mind. If you feel you need help sending negative entities away, look for a healer who does this kind of work. Many energy healers are aware of this phenomenon and know how to deal with it. Above all, don't be afraid of negative entities. Fear empowers them. Send love and compassion instead, and they won't be able to remain near you. I'd like to take the opportunity to say that Satan does not exist and never has. Every story about Satan is a myth, made up. These stories shore up the big story of good versus evil. They split life into good guys and bad guys, which simply isn't true. Everyone has the potential to be both good and bad. There is no being who is the leader of all negative entities. There are more or less powerful entities, but no eternal being who rules all entities. Being a negative entity is a temporary experience, just as being a human is a temporary experience. Being a negative entity is an experience that some beings devolve to and then evolve out of once certain lessons are learned. Some non-physical beings, ones that never become human, take this sidetrack for a while. But at one's core, every being, human or otherwise, is divine and therefore eternal. Satan is a myth, a fantasy, a fiction, like so much of what is in the Bible. When so many falsehoods are mixed with some truth, as they are in the Bible, sorting out fact from fiction becomes very difficult. Mixing truth with fiction is what con artists do to convince people of their lies. Unfortunately, the great truths that I taught make the misinformation in the Bible seem more believable. I'm not saying that the falsehoods in the Bible were necessarily intentional, although some were. Most were misunderstandings or the natural embellishments and changes that people make as they retell a story. It's important to see this about the Bible. To hold something as true that isn't will slow down your spiritual progress. Truth will take you home to love, but falsehoods will not. They leave you spinning around like in an eddy, with no clear compass or way out. Truth is the way out. The truth will set you free, means go in the direction of truth. That is the way to freedom from suffering. If you've been brought up believing everything in the Bible, here are some questions to ask yourself. How has this worked for me? Have these beliefs brought me closer to love and peace or not? How happy and free of suffering am I? How kind and accepting am I of those who are different? My teachings were about love and were meant to free you from suffering, but many of them were altered or misunderstood. They were also intended to free people from the falsehoods in the Old Testament, and yet so many Christians still turn to the Old Testament for truth, when there is little there. What does it mean to go in the direction of truth? It means go in the direction of love, joy, and peace. Do whatever brings you love, joy, and peace. If you never did anything but this, you'd become enlightened in no time. The trouble is, people go in the direction of things that aren't very true. They follow their feelings, their fears, and their ego's desires, all of which don't have much meaning or truth. Feelings, fear, and certain kinds of desires are created and maintained by the ego for the ego's purposes. If you allow these to move you and guide your actions, you'll remain stuck in the ego and divorced from true happiness. Egoic desires are a lie because they don't deliver what they promise. They promise to make you happy once and for all, but all they do is keep you on the hamster wheel of suffering, chasing one desire after another, but never being satisfied, never being done striving to get something or get somewhere. Even though getting your desires met does bring some happiness, that happiness doesn't last for long, and you're back desiring again. You're back where you started, and possibly worse off, like after a con. Thank you for your openness. Thank you for being here. I am with you always.